Welcome to the David Spisak Show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I think you're going to find this conversation super interesting for a couple reasons. This gentleman by the name of Preston Stewart, and Preston is the National Variable Operations Director for a spectacular auto group called the Napleton Auto Group out of Napleton, Illinois. And before I go any further, I first need to welcome and I want to thank you, Preston, for taking the time to join me.
I appreciate you inviting me, sir.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to seeing you down in New Orleans. So, but there's a couple reasons why I know that people that are listening are going to enjoy this, because selfishly, I'm going to enjoy this. Preston has a very interesting story where his journey through retail auto to get him to where he is today went through some really pretty spectacular paths where he was mentored by literally people I consider icons in this industry. So without any further ado, we're going to touch on that. But I also want to pick your brain, Preston, about something else that you specialize in for Napleton. And you happen to also be the director of compliance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I want to touch on that for a lot of reasons. First of all, obviously, compliance standards have never been higher. Secondly, of course, we all saw what happened with CDK last year when they unfortunately were the victim of ransomware as an attack. And that can happen so much easier than anybody thinks it can. And Preston happened to share some insights with me just before we started here that, frankly, I had never heard before. And I know that you're going to enjoy hearing about those. But before we get into any of that, I am always interested, Preston, I get to talk to you here and now when you have this very significant position in a very significant auto group. What I'm curious about is, how did you get here? I always talk to people about if we're driving in a car down Route 66 or Highway 5 in California, wherever you may be going, Highway 80 across the country, and there's mile markers, these milestones for all of us in our career. Some of them played a pretty big role in putting us where we are. Would you mind sharing, first and foremost, how long ago, what year did you start in the car business?
No, actually, I started when I was just a little kid. I grew up in a family-owned dealership out in the middle of Kansas. I didn't
know that.
Yeah, I started I was a gopher, go for this, go for that, for 6-year-old gopher for the shop. And then, I worked time and spent time in parts, spent time in the, washing cars as a lot of tenant. And ended up at 18 starting to sell cars. So I'm about 20. I'm working on 26 years now for my automotive experience. And I'll never forget, I'm on the phone with my dad. He's out in, he was in Kansas. I was at K-State in college at the time. And loose use of the words college here. And, I was selling cars for the Briggs Automotive Group there in Manhattan. And got kind of a taste for the car business. And my dad says, I got good news and bad news. What's the good news? Your mom and I are moving to Arizona. And, okay, well, kind of something else had to happen too. He goes, yeah, so we kind of sold the dealership. So there's your retirement plan out the window. You might have to get a job. And 24 hours later, my dad and I are in a car. I remember the car perfectly, like it was an Oldsmobile Intrigue. Drove cross country to Scottsdale and started my time and my journey with the Van Tile Group there at Van Chevrolet in Scottsdale. And worked for an incredible guy named Chuck Mullins. And from there, got an opportunity to move over to the Midway Automotive Group and work for another great mentor, John Cleves, who now is the CEO of Visionary Automotive Group. And, really from there, I think that's where I took that next step to watching a video like this, figure out, okay, what do I got to do to make a move into the car business? Or, really, what's my direction? Where do I want to be?
And so, can I jump in real quick?
Please.
Because you said a couple things already that, if we were at a party, somebody might say, wow, you're name dropping here. I mean, those are some heavies. And whenever somebody drops somebody's name of significance, like a couple of those people, most people want to go, okay, hold on, rewind the tape, tell me more. Because these are not stories that we hear every day, number one. And number two, I'm a big believer, the universe works in funny ways, and things happen for a reason, of course. And it's probably occurred to you a couple of times that how different your life might be you just mentioned like three pretty massive milestones, right? Number one, Dad says, "Hey, really appreciate all that time you put in, free labor and all that's great. I'm going to sell the store, so hopefully you have something on the back burner you could do." Two, we're going to move the family to Arizona. Okay, that's kind of a big deal. Three, you just happened to land at Larry Van Tile's place, and Larry is he's an icon. He's, when you think about, of course, they sold to Berkshire Hathaway, but you think of the business model of a lot of these consolidators today, Preston, as you well know, where they start to grow, and then you figure out, I got to have a bench. And boy, sometimes what a powerful thing to have individual business partners at each dealership that has a vested interest, right? Because they got to buy in. Larry was really, I don't know if he was at the beginning of that, but boy, he was at the leading edge of creating that entire movement. And then,
well, I know that he and his father created a mindset of allowing people to become independent, to be successful and support those people to be successful. It really comes down to the forward most important quote that Larry always had, and that was people, people, people. You're only as good as your people.
Isn't that funny? It sounds so simple and it sounds almost cliche. But to the people like a Larry Van Tile, right? Or if you go to Galpin, or if you go to Carl Sewell, I had the good fortune of seeing Carl, and his kids that run the organization now. When those people say people, 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 buy it. It's 100% true, isn't it, Preston?
I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's if you look at the culture, even to the day, under Mr. Rocker, who's also, again, a great leader.
100%. Great leader.
But at the end of the day, there's so many of those people still there. So, again, the foundation was strong.
Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident. So when you think about people, I always am interested in the defining moments in somebody's career. And certainly one of them is having the opportunity to be mentored by Larry and the other gentleman you mentioned. And was it John?
John Cleves, yeah.
Yeah, John Cleves. And I mean, did those guys take a personal interest in you? Was there something at some point to where they said, "Man, I like this guy's approach, the work ethic," or whatever it might have been at the time? Did they take a personal interest? Did you feel like at some point that in some form or fashion, either because of what they poured into you or a path they helped lay for you, that
100%
is responsible for where you are now?
Oh, I can tell you the exact moment. I'm sitting at the Midway stores and getting a phone call that I'm interviewing for being a regional finance director, and I have no idea even what the role entails or anything like that, but I walk into the corporate office, and I can remember the 9 other people sitting there interviewing, and every one of them are way, way, way more qualified than I am, as I'm now learning as I'm interviewing everybody in that lobby. And I'll never forget the CFO walking through and saying, "Alan Cady," and pointing to me and going, "You're up first. Let's go." And, from that day forward, I could say that was the moment. That was the moment where I realized it wasn't for me about the money as much as it was about the people and about the education and about being part of the big machine and understanding that your role is important. Everybody's role is.
It really is. So let's fast forward just a little bit. And I do want to rewind on one other thing you said, because I think it's interesting. You mentioned a tape that you watched at some point that helped crystallize in your mind that, this wasn't just a job. You wanted to grow in this business. You wanted to become great in this business. Do you remember who was on that tape or who told you to watch that tape?
Man, I can tell you who told me to watch it. It was my F&I director at the time, but it was funny. I couldn't tell you who was speaking, but I just remember sitting there in an office going, I don't want to be a finance manager the rest of my life. I'm equipped to do more. And it's moments like that. It's always nice when you can hear yourself.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there anybody else along the way, from that point to the time where you are now, working for this great group, the Napleton Auto Group, who has experienced tremendous growth, that has led you to the exact position that you're in right now?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Larry Van Tile himself, because again, he was extremely instrumental in guidance and just really focusing each one of us at the corporate level often This is a man very, very busy, but always took the time to sit down with you one-on-one. And the other person being Chris Depperman, who just recently retired a few years ago, but again, one of the greatest coaches I could have ever asked for.
Preston, how hard is it, do you think, for those of us that go? I mean, I've gone down that path myself with AutoNation, but how hard do you think it really is? What's the difference maker for somebody? We've always seen, hey, somebody could be a great salesperson. That doesn't necessarily make them a great manager, right? And somebody can be a great manager, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be a great leader or great dealer. And you could be a great leader, great dealer, great manager, all of the above. But when you get into a large organization like the Van Tuyl Group or like the Napleton Group, what does it take, do you think, to be able to lead an organization or make a contribution at that scale compared to when we were just car guys?
There's a real difference, and that is you have to care. You have to care about the people, David. You have to truly have to care, though, because, again, you can tell something when it's surface, but if you truly care about your people and you sit down and you spend the time it takes, and I carry it forward now, right? It's that pay it forward mindset. It's, I try to make sure I just instill in every person I sit down with that sky's the limit, and again, if they have, I think people are looking for that mentor these days, especially in this business and these days in the industry, how it's shifted. Mentors are not as common. And it's, again, that's what probably pushes me more to be that person for everybody around here.
So I'm guessing
all of our stores.
I'm willing to bet that you travel around a bit. I'm guessing, yes?
Traveling right now.
Yeah. And I would venture to guess, I should say, that you still love finding yourself on a showroom floor from time to time.
I call it retail therapy. Might be a different retail therapy than my wife has in mind, but, it's the same thing. I find that, what was the old saying? You might live at 30,000 feet, but the answer's in the street. So, I find that spending that time and that on the ground in retail with my people absolutely keeps me more grounded and definitely more of apprised of what's really going on.
And I also have another curiosity, if I can. So, first of all, let me frame this first. So, how long have you been at the Napleton Group?
I just actually hit my 4th year. So I started with them right in the middle of COVID in December with 2 feet of snow on the ground in Chicago coming from Scottsdale. So
little culture shock, little weather shock.
Nothing says a level of commitment like that, right? Yeah, it really was, especially for my wife and kids, no doubt.
Yeah, no kidding. How large is the Napleton Auto Group now?
I missed you. You broke up on that.
How large is the Napleton Auto Group now in terms of, I know you're in many states, many cities. How many locations?
7 states are stores that are comboed, or 8 franchises in one location, but you call it 50 rooftops. And again, it's 90 plus years in the industry, 94, I do believe this year.
Wow.
So, generational organization that I have to say, I'm super proud of that. Ability for that stay power that in this industry isn't as always as common these days.
It's iconic. I mean, for any business, was just talking about little interesting piece of data that over 50% of the businesses that were created during the recession, Fortune 500, are still around and growing. And they did so by having the willingness at times to fail fast, to rethink, to reinvent. And undoubtedly, these legendary legacy organizations, when you talk about a Van Tuyl, when you talk about, just mentioning Carl Sewell, you talk about, McClarty, you talk about Pritchard in Iowa. These are organizations that have been around, all of them around 100 years, some over 100 years. I mean, think about that for everybody out there. How many businesses, honestly, you see these big corporations, of course, but how many businesses that were started at the ground level, right? Mom and pop, local, are still here and have reinvented time and time and time and time again. And you know, Preston, how many times somebody somewhere has, projected or pronounced retail auto as either dead or dying. And yet we're still here. The dealers are thriving, they're resilient. And these organizations, like the one you work for, the very one you work for, are really, some of the lighthouse organizations out there in terms of their ability to time and time again reinvent and continue to grow.
We have the most resilient industry there is.
Period.
Think about all the different cash for clunkers comes to mind. I mean, just
how about
again,
the Ford retail network? How about the fact that GM and Ford was supposed to own a good percentage of our dealers? How about every time when Uber came out, people were going to not buy new cars anymore. I mean, every social media was going to change things. E-commerce was going to change things. We had Black Monday, the stock market in '87, the Great Recession, and time again. Dealers are just remarkable. And your organization, here you are, you have a nearly 100-year-old organization that's not just surviving. No, they're thriving, they're growing, they're reinventing. It's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I think in our industry, for a lot of people, it's tough to evolve. And, in this industry, it's been proven time and time again that if you don't evolve, you die.
Yeah, 100%. I was just saying to somebody this morning, I find it fascinating. I still run into dealers or managers that will insist their way is the way. And there's the way and there's a way. And I'm saying you're probably using a way. I can only say it's the way if it's irrefutably the best results on planet Earth, right? That's probably the way.
I don't think there's every single process you could say is the way.
No, it's always a way. But the bottom line is if whatever they're using today, whatever process, methodology, approach they're using today, if you're not even the best in your city or best in your market, I mean, come on. It's time to consider a different approach. So I love that. Now, at Napleton, since you have worked for these organizations that have been so people first, what are the things that you're proudest of at Napleton and when it comes to their commitment to people or maybe communities?
And I have to say we can talk about communities and their commitment to community service, but I would say probably the commitment to the people is the biggest thing I've noticed in my 4 years here. The Napleton family, if you put the effort forth and, your compass is aiming in the right direction, they're very supportive even through the tough times. I've had a chance to see that firsthand, and it's so for those in our industry who have great work ethic and those who just, keep their head on a swivel and keep moving forward, no matter what the times are, they're the most supportive group you're going to find. Yeah. And that's really what I was looking for in, second half of my career. And it's a group that truly cared about their people. And David, no matter what, was going to support them. And when you look across our group and just see how many of our general managers started and, had a sales position or, came up from another role within the organization, it's something we're pretty proud of.
You should be. So there was something else. You're not only the national variable ops director, which needless to say, if anybody's out there, if you run a new car department or a used car department, that just happens to be a full-time job. Fair enough, Preston?
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? If you happen to be a variable ops manager over 2 or 3 stores, that's more than a full-time job. When you're in that position for variable ops, which is when you talk about reinvention, there's a good chunk of the reinvention and disruption, as we know, in our business in recent times has hyper-focused on the new car department and even more so on the used car department. Of course, you could think of companies like Carvana and CarMax and others. But so that's a massive job in and of itself. But then on top of that, you have something else you do in your free time. And it is the director of compliance. I'm sorry, I tried to do it with a straight face. I couldn't.
And I couldn't even hear it with a straight face. No, you're right.
Yeah, man. So first of all, man, that just sounds like such a very, in and of itself. Of course, the variable ops is critically important to the growth and health of the organization. But let's face it, in the year 2025, when you talk about compliance, you're talking about reputational, you're talking about protecting the assets. You're talking about protecting the profitability going forward. You're talking about, protecting your clients from identity theft. You're talking about a lot of things. So
protecting my employees as well,
Yeah.
David. I mean, that's I take it very personal, and I like to think that if you're going to have a role like this, you just got to have a big battery.
So should every dealer, should literally every dealer have some type of a compliance manager, director of compliance, and at what level would you sit there knowing what you know now, saying, man, if I would have known, I would, like if you owned a store right now, if you opened a store, you're a new dealer, is a compliance manager and a big time legit IT director, are they at or near the top of your list?
They have to be. The industry, again, so many regulations have been caked onto our industry, and God, it's just, and there's not a lot of great directive on exactly how to set that up, and there's not a consultant that you can call to ask. So yeah, I think you do, and especially when we're in such a variable environment where it's gross minded. It's if I make enough on this deal, so having that third party person that is truly just looking at it from a non-automotive perspective, purely from a compliance perspective, is extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And I got to say, you nailed on the other one. That is, with your technology team, it really takes a specialist these days. And these are the added costs our industry has taken on. But to have somebody, our newest CTO we brought in a few years back has done incredible jobs of taking our group into the next century.
I don't think, Preston, I honestly, first of all, I would venture to say, and somebody please feel free to throw, if you have any hard research or science behind this, but just based on the relationships I have, the people I work with, the people I talk to throughout this industry, I would venture to say, especially if you pulled the publics out and the large privates, I would honestly be shocked if even 15 or 20% of retail dealers have a legitimate, certified, big-time IT professional in their midst, much less a compliance person. And most of them, I think, outsource it. And don't get me wrong, there's some brilliant outsourcing organizations, a couple I could think of, I won't mention, but I really like, and they do a good job. And at the very least, should have that. But I still see dealers that are using the controller, or the parts manager or somebody as their IT person or administrator. And there's a big difference between 30 years ago when we had somebody who was the admin for the DMS controlling passwords and setting up usernames versus where we are today. Why is that?
The restrictions today, cost is obviously a big part of that, right? But at the end of the day, if you're allowing a vendor to be touching all of your customer data and they're not SOC 2 certified, and you don't understand what that means, I'd say if you're listening to this and you go, what's SOC 2? Probably need to have an IT guy.
Yeah. How about SOC 1? It's very hard to comply with, to meet SOC 1. And then you got ISO, ISO 77701 and ISO 7701. These are big and they're important. And one of the things that you had mentioned, I think, in a previous conversation, is just the sheer increase in bad guys that are perpetrators who have found yet another way to be able to kind of infiltrate an organization. People think, hey, as long as I have filters, or I've got firewalls, or I've got Barracuda, or I've got this third-party IT person, I've got that. There's just so much more to it than that. It's so easy. Single email, one click, somebody drops something into your system. It lives there for potentially weeks at a time, just waits, potentially sells it to a ransomware organization on the dark web. Next thing you know, somebody's asking you for a big bucket of money. That's happened to multiple dealerships in the last 12 months.
Lock your business up and completely shut you down. It's actually more common than it should be, that's for sure. But I call it the digital surge, David. Again, between 22 and 24, there's been an online increase of fraudulent, ID theft apps. 30%, I believe, was the number. But it's all about increased reliance and availability of digital platforms. We've invited multiple digital platforms into our business, be it, take your pick, right? V Auto to CDK. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people touching your data. And it's, I would say that's something you have to really take a really close, hard look at is who's touching my data? What do they have available? And am I protected?
Yeah, I created a class, a curriculum for NCM probably 10 years ago called How to Leverage, Manage, Control, and Secure Your Data. And, one of the things I shared with dealers at that time is all the data in your store, right? You only own the operational data. You don't own the credit card. You don't own the customer data. You don't own the warranty data. You don't own parts of the data that's part of the DMS, but you're required to protect all of it. It's like it's on you. So It's gotten complicated. You as part of your compliance position, and you mentioned how much more we're getting infiltrated just simply because you mentioned, digital retailing during the pandemic became a big thing. We went from less than 50% of stores having a storefront, so to speak, to nearly 100% now having a digital retailing storefront. And it sounds great, and you could shop online, and though it is great. But it's also not just cracked open the door, it flung the door wide open, didn't it?
It did, but I mean, you can protect yourself by having the right partners. Really, Dave, that's the first thing I focused on is make sure we have the right partners, that we have the right systems in place that are there to attempt to at least give our team the upper hand to be able to stop those activities before they occur.
So, for example, you guys are in how many states?
7.
7 states and many, many cities. And you're undoubtedly, because of the digital storefront and because of just how things are evolving, chances are you're like most stores. I was just talking to, not too long ago, the biggest Mercedes store, and they have more and more people, including myself. I get a car from them every couple of years. I don't go to the dealership. The car shows up on a flatbed. They send me documents. They send me through a process where a notary's there to ensure there's no identity theft. I am who I say I am.
That partner specifically is one of the most important pieces, David. Making sure whoever I like to think that if you're going to bring somebody in to protect you and to be that notary, to be those eyes and ears on an offsite transaction, really have to have the right partner.
So who do you use as a partner?
I've always used Maverick, MavSign. And it's that company. I've been utilizing them since my early VT days. I think we were probably client number 2 over there.
Really? At Van Tile?
Been there to watch them evolve. It's pretty neat.
Wow. And that was way back at Van Tile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, again, legacy, iconic organization like Fletcher Jones, iconic organization, number 1 Mercedes store, I think, probably on planet Earth. And
I think so.
They told me the same. They use the same. So what is it about MavSign? First of all, I'm curious about 2 things. What is it about MavSign that makes them special? And then why, in your opinion, I was interfacing with a law firm and CPA firm talking about the same thing. And they said, if you don't have a compliance partner to protect you like that could protect you and your customers from identity theft and those types of transactions, whether it's out of state or just somebody who signs outside the store, you're really opening yourself up these days to a massive problem. So why MavSign back in Van Tile? Why today? What has allowed them in your brain to be the de facto?
Reliability. Consistent reliability. It's and again, they've evolved a lot even in the last few years in the new digital age to allow us the ability to not just send documents off now that we contract so many remote transactions. So again, they've done a great job of evolving with us to continually find something to help us just have a better idea about the person across the email from us. Be it to the day we actually use their on-site ID verification, which is done even utilized in our stores at a retail level location.
So even if I walked into your store, MavSign, you're saying you could use them to verify I am who I am, because some of these driver's licenses I've seen lately, holy cow, they look good.
And I would say that's the danger is you look at a true ID theft, full file at the end of it, you're going to be baffled by how much of it just looks real. Pay stubs, you'll have proof of residence. Again, they know every bit of they'll pass through all the questions. You need things like this and like synthetic fraud alerts, that they offer up at Equifax. Those are the things that truly do give you at least a quick snapshot of who's sitting in front of you. The other one's Borrower Checkpoint Predictive. That's another company we have teamed up with. So again, you really can't look at one layer. You kind of have to look at trying to protect yourself at each little avenue where everything can hit you.
And when you were using MavSign at Van Tyler today, I really would be interested in your opinion. If you're a salesperson might think, understandably, hey, I asked you for your driver's license. You showed it to me. I checked the box. Did you get their license? I did. Did you make a copy? I did. Good. We're done. But we're not done, are we?
That's correct.
It's just not enough.
Because
these days, that's just not far enough.
It's just frankly, not enough.
Touch on this too, Preston. First of all, is that far enough these days? And two, if it turns out that it wasn't far enough and that happened to be a fraudulent ID, even though that person said, I grabbed the ID, I made a copy, and that copy's in the deal jacket, that dealership in that case still has a problem, don't they?
They do. They have got to utilize, some type of ID verification as well as just, again, the basic tools we have available to us, right? I mean, DealerTrack, Route 1 obviously have their ID1 system, right? It's the out of wallets, in wallet questions. I say you just have to have a plan and you have to train on it and execute and hold the team accountable for it.
Yeah, so if you didn't use processes like, if I'm you and I didn't have MavSign in my store, and you say you're doing remote deals, like how many additional remote deals do you think that allows you to do with the complete peace of mind, being able to secure the client's data and their identity? Is that, 2, 3, 4 deals a month at this point?
I don't think you quantify
10,
it that
20,
way,
30?
David. I don't think you quantify it that way. I think what you look at is, do you want to put your head on a pillow as an owner every night knowing that the deals that your dealership just said they sold and rolled aren't fraud?
And you're saying put my head on the pillow, both, I'm guessing, from a financial side, a litigious side, a reputational side.
And just from your ulcer, my gosh, there's so much fear factor of, okay, sold 6 cars to the other side of the country. If we weren't using this, I'd lose sleep over that. And you should.
How easy, though? I mean, a lot of dealers are going to say, man, I've got a number of solutions in my store, F&I, Route 1, DealerTrack. Like, how easy is this solution to use for the sales team?
Doesn't take any time at all. I mean, to do an order, they've even made it now where it's on your phone. So it's,
wow.
Mobile app makes it even easier.
Wow.
Not a lot of excuses when it only takes 5 minutes to put together.
Yeah, no kidding. So for 5 minutes, you really can put your head on the pillow and sleep.
Well, we have a lot of luxury stores that do a lot of offsites, and it's, I just can't even imagine not having the pieces we have in place. It's just the fear factor. Because again, as so many on this call understand, ID theft, it strains your lending relationship, right? It results in increased scrutiny from our regulators. And overall, it causes customers unnecessary emotional and financial distress. So why wouldn't we spend a couple minutes to make sure everything's right?
Yeah. That makes sense, especially if the process is simple. You also mentioned reliability. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, how is it reliable? How is the process for MavSign reliable? What does that mean to you?
It means that they've been there. They've been right there for me the entire time. David, and I say that's not the same we can say for all vendors, right? For all of our partners in the industry, it's, a lot of changes over the years. Companies evolve. Mav's always done a great job of staying the same company. In fact, I do believe to the day 3 of the original founders are still there.
Wow. That says a lot. And so when was the first time you used them? How long ago?
Oh, God, it's been over 10 years plus. I mean, Again, we've all tried to put pen to paper on that over the years, but it's 10 plus years.
So it's a company that really, truly does understand and is embedded in our industry.
I say more so than we even think on this call.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool. Anything else? You mentioned a number of compliance organizations or solutions that can be used. Anything else that you'd want to add about MapSign or any of the other ones?
No, I think if, back to a topic we were talking about earlier, and it's, this is somebody who handles this portion of it, but the other part of your compliance, back to the question of, do you have somebody at the store level? If you can't have somebody at the store level, I would just say make sure that you incorporate an organization like KPA or like GVO3. Again, either one of those organizations who can bring you that third-party look at where you're at. I mean, I have a full-blown compliance team built into my office. Multiple people spend, auditing transactions on a daily basis through across all the stores and, one-on-one meetings with their stores constantly. But even with that, I still have, GVO3 and Associates that comes in and looks behind me to make sure that I, again, my advisor. I recommend you just have the right advisors around you.
What about on the DMS side? Who do you use for DMS?
Our CDK.
CDK. So you went through that process in real time, first person. What did you learn?
I learned that I need to have a better plan for emergencies. That's the first thing. And I also learned I was really happy I had Darwin menu. But either way, I think what we learned more than anything is the importance of protecting data, the importance of if this system goes down, it can happen. And I guess this is the best way to say it is if it can happen to CDK, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah. I agree. I think these days it would be a big mistake. We'd be arrogant to think that it couldn't potentially happen to pretty much anybody out there. Of course, certain environments, monolithic architectures, or some would say, or many would say on the cybersecurity side, those are a little bit more prone, easier to penetrate than the more modern ones that are used today. But anybody, we've seen literally, big Fortune 500 companies that no doubt have all the security, all the cybersecurity, all the walls, all the protocols, and they figure out how to get in there. So it just seems like it's kind of like, the Internet of Things, right? People think, oh, don't worry, I've got firewall protection on my router, from my cable company or Wi-Fi company. Okay, but I could get in through your refrigerator. I could get in through your stove. I could get in through your TV if it's on Internet of Things. Every one of those is a potential entry point, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's the thing about it is there's a lot of those entry points that you don't have somebody guarding at the front door. So,
exactly.
And without a guard at the front door, you really have to rely on a good IT department that's built a process that is, MFA. It has to, again, there are so many tools that we just choose not to adopt due to cost or due to time or training for a lot of reasons, right? But again, my recommendation would just be make sure spend the time. It's worth it.
I kind of feel like, after chatting with you that we're potentially, not just because of what happened with CDK and what we all learned and, had this moment of, good God, this could happen to anybody. But almost like we're in this awkward position, watershed moment that, we've been experiencing in the last 5 years, especially a proliferation of solutions, which on the one hand, many of them offer, legitimate solutions, new paths to getting better, more productive, more efficient, offering a better experience to the client. But each and every one of them creates at the same time a little bit of a challenge because now it's the 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, 15th, 18th solution in store. Now you have to manage each one of those ecosystems. You're responsible for the data coming out of each one of them. They're all proliferating data. They each have their own support systems, training companies, invoices, And it seems like we're getting to a tipping point when it comes to the technology stack in your mind. Are we at a tipping point? Has it become untenable because of the lack of integration across most of the ecosystem?
I'm going to say I think we're at a pivotal point right now. And that is the introduction of AI into the automotive field is both going to add opportunities for us to become smarter, faster workers. more efficient in our roles. I think, again, if we use AI for the right reasons, right, which is not to replace employees, but to make our employees
Well
more
said.
productive. Okay. But also it brings up a whole nother section of continuous risk. And that is now you have, we got the same tools that the criminals did. So they're going to come up with some creative things that, we're always going to have to be, again, in front of trying to combat against. And it's, again, I think it'll be one of our biggest challenges over the next 10 years is AI and quantum computing. And, again, I think these are the things that we're going to continue to see both benefit us and potentially add risk.
I think that's very well said. For anybody listening, keep in mind, the power of AI is their data source. So every one of them has a data source, some of them multiple data sources. And anytime there is a data source where that data source continues to introduce and add more and more and more data, it could be both powerful and problematic. So the questions you ask about any AI company, any AI solution, and God knows we're going to see a lot of them this year at NADA, but it's important. What kind of AI are they using? What is their source of data? Do they have transparency there? How long have they been pulling it? How well is their processes or their AI models been working? Is it generative or is it quote unquote dumb AI, meaning algorithmic in nature, machine learning, super AI? I mean, there's a lot. Just in AI, there's a lot.
Oh, it's funny because we're really just on a very early stage of the evolution of AI. So, we're still in stage one.
We are. That's my point. And yet there's products out there that is saying, hey, this comes with AI. Oh, okay. Okay. This to AI. Oh, great. Okay, great. But
I think a lot of them aren't very honest.
We haven't even had a chance to learn. A lot of people in dealerships haven't even taken the opportunity, haven't had the chance to learn. And let's face it, Preston, AI, the development of AI and the evolution of AI is happening at a more rapid pace than any software development we've ever experienced. True?
Yeah, well, you have a software that's actually writing some software. So, yeah, it's going to be a continuous growth no matter what you do.
Man, this makes me, I love tech. I love, being open-minded. I love learning about things. But, I'm not hating the fact that I'm 65, because I'll tell you what, I'm smart enough to be here. I'm no genius, but I'm smart enough to be here. I'm not so certain. I don't think I'm smart enough if I was 20 or 25 to keep up with the rate of change that we are seeing. And this is just, to your point, the front edge of this. True?
Well, I think that's where we have to be great guardians, okay? Because if you have a bad AI right now, there's so little understood about it, right? That anybody can really make any claim at this point and probably away with getting in the front door. So I think you just have to be way more conscious and way more focused on, is that partner who's going to then have so much access to your data, are they the right partner? Okay. Yeah. Do they have your best interest in mind?
Yeah. Great point. Great point. Any parting thoughts either on, well, let me ask you this. What are you looking forward to most of all heading to NADA?
I'm intrigued to see what the AI progress has been.
Do you want to? I'm going to take a walk. And
absolutely. Saturday sounds like a blast.
I'm going to purposely go find those small upstart companies, that have the 10 by 10 table near the men's room in the very back of the convention center. I want to see what's percolating there, Preston. I want to check some of the AI companies out that are out there. Would you want to hang out and check these out?
Absolutely. Like we talked about, I think Saturday is a perfect day, but those are the emergers, right? Those are the ones that are going to be the disruptors.
Yeah,
they're doing things that are
I want to talk to them.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. In fact,
I would love it. I think there's going to be some people we talk to that we go, holy cow, seriously, that's coming?
There are some things I can tell you just from my conversations with different AI organizations. I in fact use a company that does all my training videos now. It's I'm an avatar and it's got my voice, and my compliance team can build a compliance video without me even around the office.
Oh my God. So wait, you're an avatar or a Rovion?
It's an avatar. It's Synthesia.
Wow.
Synthesia. That's the name of the company. So it's a great tool right there. Very inexpensive. Kind of gets rid of the need of green screens. And kind of just do it yourself. In fact, it gives you, there's AI candidates too. They give you like 50 different people you can use as your presenter, and it's fascinating. But no, and again, on top of that, there's Auto Trainer, which is allowing us now. It's an AI that allows your F&I people to practice against an AI that has been built and created as a profile specifically to, 18-year-old first-time buyer or a 71-year-old, retiree paying cash. And they've actually done a great job to
I've
build.
seen also Rocked is doing some pretty remarkable things on the training side on AI. So there is some great AI being deployed out there. Some other AI that dealers are saying, God, I was really excited, but it's pissing my customers off.
Anticlimactic, let me tell you. There's a lot of that out there, and that's that imitator I'm talking about, right?
That's the fine line, right? Because you said it earlier. I mean, I love the fact that so much of this conversation, so much of your growth, so much of your career path has been so deeply rooted in people as a foundation of a great business, as it should be. And you also mentioned that, in the AI conversation, it's people. You also mentioned that when it comes to having a partner, not a vendor, but a great partner. And you mentioned MavSign, such a great partner because of the people that they have, and they're reliable. They show up, they do what they say they're going to do. And that's allowed you to have the peace of mind and the confidence to do these remote deliveries or out-of-state deliveries, right?
Yep, 100%. And again, what the nice part about Mav is that really, David, is that they're evolving. And it's I love seeing that because it's fun when you see a company you've supported for over half your career really truly evolving and looks like they're going to survive the next iteration of our industry.
Yeah, not just survive, but in all likelihood continue to get better, and hopefully be in more and more stores, so it protects more and more stores and gives more and more stores the confidence to be able to sell outside the store. Because if you're just selling inside the store, I saw something from Deloitte recently that said 62% of people still want to negotiate inside the stores. 80% of people still want to touch the car at the store. They want to demo drive the store. But guys, every year that number changes. Now it's 20, 25, 30, 40 on that side. The customer side is comfortable doing business outside of the store. If we're not equipped for us to be able to meet them, we always say we want to meet them where they are. Well, guess what? Now more and more are outside the store. You got to definitely, based on what you're saying, you got to have a partner and a solution that allows you to meet them there.
Well, I think there's still some other evolutions that need to happen in our industry to truly meet somebody on that playing field. But, again,
getting rid of wet signatures wouldn't be bad.
Well, and I would say that we're almost there.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, except for it brings an entirely different, set of problems on its own, right? So it's
here we go again. Aye. Well, I was convinced you were going to solve every single one of my problems today. I was convinced you were going to solve all of Retail Auto's problems, and of course, I say that in jest. But you've really, I think, done a spectacular service in being able to share really from a very high level, very credible level, both because of the depth of your career, the positions you've held, the people who have mentored you, the great partners that you've worked with, and of course, the great organization that you do all of this for on a day-by-day basis, and both on the variable side to sell cars, maximize that part of the business, and then on the compliance side, to protect, the assets, the reputation, the associates' data, the clients' data, and ultimately, the business itself, to protect it at the highest level. So you're very unique in terms of the positions that you have, Preston. It's been fascinating. I knew it would be fascinating to talk to you, and it really was. I want to thank you for taking the time to join today, and I look forward to walking those big, wide red carpets in New Orleans and checking out some of the newest solutions out there, and solutions that are very intelligently using AI today, and then digging around to find some that we may all be talking about maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years from now.
I think there'll be at least 3 or 4 out of that event that we're all going to see as part of our daily lives.
I agree. I'm already seeing some now out there that are really starting to permeate, CRM, pre-owned cars, some of the other aspects of the business, accounting is starting
Even
to come
CDK
in.
is making some inroads to following that same.
They have to,
as well, so.
don't they? They
Yeah.
have to. Because if they don't figure out a way to join that party, how do you stay up? How do you stay relevant?
Yeah, if you don't stay relevant, the party bus leaves without you.
It does, one way or another. So it's always the customer that gets to decide. So in any case, thank you. Appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing you in New Orleans. And really
pleasure.
appreciate your feedback and insights about the industry and about your views on the compliance side on how we could continue to find new ways to sell cars, meet the expectations of our clients, and do it in a way that protects everybody. Thanks so much. And for those,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, of course, you're welcome. For those who've
I will
taken
see
the
you this
time to
weekend.
join, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Please feel free to go to davidspisak.com. You'll find information on how to contact Preston in case you want to keep the conversation going. Maybe you have a question or two from somebody who's in the real world in a giant organization who has worked every day diligently on how to protect the organization and the people in it. You'll also find show notes on this episode, as well as access to, 170 plus, 180 plus episodes out there by some other really, really wonderful people. If you happen to be wandering around New Orleans, please, and you see Preston and I wandering around, feel free to tag along. And maybe we end up with a big posse in search of the next great AI tool. And in the meantime, hopefully you'll share this episode out with anybody who's really trying to figure out compliance and really trying to understand how do I grow my organization in a hyper-intelligent fashion. Thanks so much for taking the time to join. See you next time on the David Spisak Show.